Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our year 2020-21 official church year kickoff. Yay! It feels different this year. Everything feels different this year, but somehow we have made it around to this point in time again. We're celebrating day one of the CVUU church year, and somehow in this period of history when the world feels halted and warped and unfamiliar, we're still marking a yearly anniversary as if it is any other time. Time moves on, anniversaries are marked, whether what surrounds them feels familiar or not. We know, of course, that it is not any other year. I myself have become very tired of what platitudes we have used to describe this strange time and these unprecedented times. I, for one, am really sick of hearing that. It no longer feels adequate or truthfully descriptive of what we are experiencing and enduring. The same goes for the phrase, when we get back to normal. That's another one I could happily never hear again. But we do know that this is a strange time, especially for those of us for whom church life and church community is a vital part of our spiritual expression and our social life. In this year, when it's unsafe to gather in proximity, when it's dangerous to share a meal or even the same air molecules, we are not marking this year with a retreat at Hartman Reserve, a delicious shared potluck meal, or the gentle embrace of green trees and fresh air and drum circles. We are not coming in strong with an impromptu dance party at the front of the sanctuary, all of us suddenly up on our feet, dancing with the pure joy of sharing this moment in this place together. We are instead gathered in this virtual space, which at this point, 6 months in itself almost feels normal, almost feels like this is the way we have always done church. We are incredibly adaptable creatures, and I think that we've come to a point where gathering on Zoom at 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings feels in itself like a normal thing to do. But we are marking this new calendar year with perhaps more trepidation than jubilation this particular time around. I know that I am not alone in my worries and my concerns about what the CVUU will look like when we come out the other side of this, whenever that will be. I know that every church across the country, regardless of denomination, every synagogue, every mosque, every temple of faith is asking these same questions. How do we survive this? What do we look like when we are able to gather together again? Who may never return? Who will move on and find new communities? What will we have to rebuild or recreate? I'm asking a lot of questions about our individual and collective dedication to this community, especially once this community moved online. How do we continue to translate the same feelings of fellowship and belovedness when we are faced with what will likely be a mostly virtual calendar year? Every year, we create a yearly theme, and we make goals related to that theme, and we commit to doing the work of church for one more year. 2 years ago, our theme was transformation, and transform we did. It was the first year I joined you in ministry, and we were all eager to breathe new life into our beloved community. Last year, we focused on shared ministry with our tagline, "We're all in this together." And I texted Heather to ask her what was our tagline. I knew of course we had one, and I just couldn't quite remember. And she texted back and said, "I think it was 'We're all in this together.'" And I said, "Oh yeah, of course, we had a theme song." And I said to her, "That feels like it was 5 years ago." And she said, "At least." So it's really just incredible to me how slow and how rapidly time seems to be moving right now. And it's a bit ironic, isn't it, that our theme last year was "We're all in this together," especially now that we're exploring togetherness in a very different way. It would mean something, if that were our theme this year, it would mean something a lot different than it meant only a year ago. But we dedicated last year to clarifying our shared vision, which after voting at the annual meeting, I will remind you, is we strive to be a welcoming community, inspiring minds, nurturing spirituality, and acting for greater justice in the world. We focused our energies on seeking out our own particular gifts and then committing to applying them to the good of our beloved CVUU. In the 2 years I've been blessed to pastor this congregation, we have recommitted, rejuvenated, reconstructed, and recovenanted. We've reinforced a strong foundation, and thank goodness, because this year we are faced with so much real uncertainty. We are removed from the sanctuary we love so much. We are not able to gather freely all together. And that means that we are learning new ways of doing church. It is my hope that our bonds and our commitment to keeping faith alive will be what gets us through this year. And so, without further ado, our theme for the 2021 church year is Beyond These Walls. As we have always known, and as we are learning anew, the church is not a building. The church is a people. We are still the Cedar Valley Unitarian Universalist, even if we can't create church in the same ways we always have. We have 3 goals for this church year. The first is staying together online. The second is nurturing our youth. And the third is growing our presence beyond the CVUU. I'll talk about those goals one by one. So, staying together online. We know, especially in Iowa, which unfortunately is one of the reddest zones in the country, it is not safe to gather in the large numbers that we once did, and gathering for in-person worship would look and feel nothing like the worship we were having only 7 months ago. And so that means that if we are to continue to have fellowship beyond Sunday mornings, that we have to shore up our collection of volunteers who are willing to host online gatherings and hangouts, who are willing to continue to run programming in a way that draws people in and draws folks together. This last week, Heather, our board president, called a meeting of the Zoom hosts, and I was really excited and surprised to see the interesting collection of people who had come together who thought that, yeah, maybe they could do some volunteering to run some Zoom meetings and Zoom gatherings during this year. I made it clear during this meeting that the sustaining of church fellowship in this year will mean that we have to have volunteers that are willing to participate. Heather and myself and Mary Kay have made a pact that we are not going to host every event, and that we are going to be really intentional about the boundaries that we put around our time. And so as we do when we're in person, we need this community to come together and make this happen beyond those who typically and reliably are leaders in this community. I want to say something else that's about kind of the opposite side of this coin, of this goal, staying together online. I want to make it really transparent that I understand that virtual church is not the same as in-person church, and that virtual gathering, Zoom hangouts and Zoom happy hours and Zoom book groups and Zoom support groups, it's not the same. And especially if you're a person who is working from home and spends, a lot of time already in virtual space and virtual meeting space, it makes sense that you just may not have the bandwidth or the spoons or the energy to attend a whole bunch of online church fellowship meetings if you're already online for so much of the day. I want to make it really clear that I understand that. And I don't want to come across as if I'm putting pressure on people to participate in online activities that they just may not have the energy for. And that's true of myself. I have found that in a lot of ways, I'm working more than I ever have, but I'm getting a lot less of the things that necessarily fill me up and rejuvenate me. So we need to consider new ways to stay together and to stay connected to this beloved community online, whether that is checking in regularly with the Facebook group, whether that's coming to the Wednesday night hangouts, or whether it's coming to church, or even if it's, listening to the podcasts or watching the sermon video after church is over. It's about figuring out the ways that work for you and feel healthiest for you, that you can contribute and stay connected to the CVUU during a year when we know that we'll be mostly in a virtual space. Our second goal is nurturing our youth. And I'm going to be real honest with y'all for a minute here, in that I think that our youth programming and the engagement and the nurturing of the kids in our congregation has taken a back seat for a long time. I've talked a lot. I've been talking since I got here. Y'all must be sick of it by now, about the silo effect at the CVUU. We have all these committees that do a lot of really awesome work, and somehow the rest of us don't hear about it. And I want you to know that the REAP Council, the Religious Education and Programming Council, they meet all the time, and they care so much about how we engage our youth and the programming that we offer our youth. And, Heather said it in announcements this morning. Imagine a world full of adults who had been raised with Unitarian Universalist principles and values. Imagine the world that we could create if that were true. So I want us to remember, especially during a year when we cannot see them in person, that there are young people in this congregation and that they need fellowship just as much as we do. Our second hour today will be with Marta, who is the head of the REAP Council, and she's going to talk about some of the really awesome things that the REAP Council is up to offer online curriculum for RE this year. And like Maureen said, you know, the youth group is meeting once a month on Wednesday nights. They're often playing online games, and it's really fun. And it's a good opportunity to just pop in and, you know, remember who some of our youth are and connect. And part of what we'll do today is we'll do some brainstorming, and I'm sure people have ideas about how to realize these 3 goals. And we're starting with our youth because I think that remembering our youth during this year is absolutely vital to the continued survival and thriving of this community. Our last goal this year is growing our presence beyond the CVUU. And that's something that has been challenging for us in years past. You know, we do a very good job when we're rallied up and called on, you know, wearing our yellow t-shirts, showing up to school board meetings, or showing up to protests, or, you know, showing up to community forums. We do a very good job of that, but it hasn't always been the easiest thing to remain a consistent, noticeable presence in the wider community. And I think we actually have a really cool opportunity during a year when we're mostly online to grow our presence beyond the CVUU, because once you're online, that means that you are accessible and available to everyone. So everything that we create this year, whether it be our Sunday worship or forums that we may host, suddenly will be available to everyone. And we've been talking in some of the various committees about how to invite, you know, folks who, you know, maybe they live in Texas and there's not a Unitarian Universalist congregation for 300 miles, but they'd love to sit in on service at the CVUU on Sunday mornings. Or maybe we have folks that moved away a long time ago and they miss their CVUU family, and finally they have an opportunity to visit us and to come back. So our staff is working really hard. I think you all know by now that Kat is just incredibly savvy when it comes to online marketing and social media stuff. And so we're really looking at this year as a way, you know, I think perhaps even globally, to increase our presence to increase our presence beyond the walls of the CVUU, beyond these walls. That's our theme for the year. I understand that this is a strange time. I understand that we are asking you to flex and to stretch in ways that are unfamiliar and perhaps very uncomfortable. I understand that all of us are carrying a certain amount of emotional and spiritual distress all of the time. I understand that it is easy to begin to feel like you are disconnected from the CVUU, like this place that once meant so much to you, where you could go on Sunday mornings, is suddenly not available to you anymore. And I understand how that can begin to make you feel distant and removed. I understand all of those things. I am empathetic to those things. And that is part of the reason that this message this morning is not, you know, some rah, 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 let's get it done. Let's have 6 Zoom meetings a week and create all of this new curriculum and just go wild in the virtual space. I understand that most of us don't have the bandwidth or the energy for something like that. But I want the CVUU to survive this strange time. I want us to come out the other end connected to one another and ready to rebuild and restructure the way that we do church. If you are feeling disconnected, if you are feeling withdrawn, I encourage you to reach out to the folks in the congregation that you already know, that you already love, that will, reground you and reconnect you to a community that once meant a lot to you. And I want you to remember that no matter what, no matter how long this time of virtual community persists, no matter what happens, that phrase, come hell or high water, the CVUU is going to survive. We are going to remain a beloved community, a space for misfit toys to find refuge, to find a place to belong. We are still going to be here. We're not going anywhere. We're just beyond these walls this year. So find comfort in that, find inspiration in this theme where you can, and please come to these adult forums over the next couple of weeks and share your thoughts. Share your thoughts about what this coming church year could look like and the things that we can learn from one another and the ways that we can comfort one another and the ways that we can continue to keep on keeping on. All right. Happy church kickoff. Beyond these walls. Let's do this, folks. Let's do this together. Amen and blessed be.